In 1943, the US Navy used impossible technology to make a warship disappear, teleport, and travel through time. But when the ship returned, it was a scene straight out of a nightmare. The government says it never happened, but when one man claimed he was on that deck and that he jumped into a time portal, he blew the lid off something called the Philadelphia experiment. October 28, 1943, the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. The world is burning. Nazi U-boats are slaughtering Allied ships faster than we can build them. Every day, American boys are sinking to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The Battle of the Atlantic isn't a battle, it's a massacre. But today, the US Navy is about to change everything. And according to rumors whispered in mess halls, different. Because bolted inside the hull are these massive generators and coils of wire that hum with a frequency that make your teeth ache. This is an experimental technology, never before tested, and if it works, it could turn the tide of the entire war. This new technology was designed to make a ship invisible. The order was given to begin the experiment, and the generators screamed to life. A low vibrating hum shook the dock. Then the fog began. Not the gray mist of a Pennsylvania autumn, but something else. A green fog. Electric, otherworldly. It clung to the ship like a living thing. Observers watched in terror as the steel began to waver. It blurred like a mirage, and then, in a flash of blinding blue light, 1,200 tons of American steel vanished. Hundreds of miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, sailors claim they saw the Eldridge appear out of thin air for a few terrifying minutes before vanishing again, snapping back to Philadelphia. When the green fog lifted, the Eldridge was back, but something was wrong. Horribly wrong. Men were screaming, some violently ill, others laughing maniacally, their minds shattered. But the worst were the ones who were silent, because they were fused to the ship. Arms buried in solid steel, legs merged with bulkheads, men and metal woven together at a molecular level, still alive, still breathing, but trapped in a hellish embrace with the machine that was meant to protect them. To understand why anyone would believe the US Navy tried to make a warship invisible, you have to understand the desperation of 1943. The war was not going well for the Allies. Nazi U-boat wolf packs were sinking Allied ships faster than we could build them. If you were a sailor on one of these vessels, you lived with the constant gnawing fear of a torpedo tearing your world apart before you even knew the enemy was there. Invisibility wasn't a sci-fi dream, it was a tactical necessity. If you can't be seen, you can't be hit. But we aren't talking about camouflage paint. We're talking about Einstein, the unified field theory. The legend says the Navy recruited the brightest minds of the century, Nikola Tesla, John von Neumann, Albert Einstein himself, to apply Einstein's unified field theory to military hardware, a theory that sought to connect electromagnetism and gravity into one equation. If you can bend light around an object, that object becomes invisible, not just to radar, but to the naked eye. This was the goal behind Project Rainbow. The Navy outfitted the USS Eldridge with massive electromagnetic coils wrapped around the hull, degaussing cables, standard on ships to confuse magnetic mines, supposedly modified and connected to specialized generators capable of creating an electromagnetic field so intense, so powerful, that it would create a bottle around the ship. Inside that bottle, space-time would be compressed, and outside, light would flow around it like water around a rock. July 1943 was said to be the first big test. The generators were spun up, the field was activated. The ship then became invisible to radar. It was a success, but then the optical effects started. The ship was shrouded in a greenish haze. The crew began to complain of nausea. When the field was cut, the crew was disoriented, sick, changed somehow. The Navy was thrilled by the achievement of radar invisibility, but worried about the side effects on the ship's crew. They ordered a change to focus on radar invisibility and not to mess with the optical spectrum due to the potential danger. But the scientists pushed harder, which brings us back to that day in October. The generators were synced, the field was expanded. Witnesses said that the water under the ship formed a depression as if the vessel had simply ceased to exist. The ship didn't just turn transparent, it physically left this dimension, and then in an instant, it was said the Eldridge traveled from Philadelphia to Norfolk, Virginia and back, over 200 miles in a matter of minutes. When they returned, the scene on the deck was straight out of a horror movie. Men were burning with a cold blue fire that couldn't be put out. The brush-off became a grim term among survivors. If a man froze in the flux, others had to rub his skin vigorously to bring him back to reality. If they stopped too soon, the man might fade away forever, lost to time. Then there were the men who walked through walls, except the walls solidified before they were all the way through. Organic matter and steel atoms occupied the same space, then suddenly and horrifically fused together, forever welded to the bulkheads. In the aftermath, the Navy decided to shut the project down. The equipment was stripped, the logs were scrubbed, the men were said to be brainwashed, discharged, or placed into mental institutions to cover the whole thing up. Project Rainbow was buried, and for 12 years, it stayed that way. That was until a man named Carlos Allende wrote a letter. In 1955, astronomer Morris K. Jessup published the book The Case for the UFO, exploring how UFOs might use anti-gravity technology and electromagnetic field manipulation. Shortly after, he received a rambling letter written in varying colors of ink from a man calling himself Carlos Miguel Allende. Allende claimed to be a witness. He said he was a sailor aboard the SS Andrew Forsyth, docked in Philadelphia in October 1943. He claimed he watched another ship, the USS Eldridge, become engulfed in a green fire, and then saw it return and all the chaos that ensued. He described men stuck in the freeze and a bar brawl where Eldridge sailors vanished into thin air mid-fistfight, which terrified the locals. Jessup, however, dismissed him as a crackpot. But 2 years later, the Office of Naval Research contacted Jessup. They'd received a copy of his own book with margins filled with bizarre notes, scribbled in 3 colors of ink, seemingly by 3 different people they designated as Mr. A, Mr. B, and Jemmy. The notes discussed alien species, gravity manipulation, and the Philadelphia experiment in great detail. The ONR officers were spooked. The notes seemed to imply a knowledge of physics and technology that shouldn't exist. They asked Jessup to come in, and when he saw the handwriting, he recognized it immediately. All 3 people in the margins were actually the writings of Carlos Allende. But instead of throwing the book in the trash, the Office of Naval Research printed it. They didn't just file it away. The Vero Manufacturing Corporation, a military contractor, reproduced the book with all the crazy marginal notes intact. They printed 127 copies, which became known as the Vero edition. Why would a serious military contractor and the US Navy spend time and money reprinting the ramblings of a madman unless there was something in those notes that they recognized, something that hit too close to the truth? This Vero edition became the holy grail of conspiracy theorists. It was the spark that lit the fire for the story. If the Navy was interested in Allende's story, then Allende must be telling the truth. After the meeting, Jessup became increasingly paranoid. He felt watched. Items in his office had been moved. The Navy reached out directly, asking what he knew about the Philadelphia experiment. For Jessup, this was confirmation that they were hiding something, and he became obsessed with learning more. But his life was falling apart. His books weren't selling, his marriage crumbled. A serious car accident left him physically and emotionally damaged. In April of 1959, he wrote what can only be described as a suicide note, calling himself a complete vegetable. But then something changed. On April 19th, Jessup called his friend Dr. Manson Valentine, excited and enthusiastic. He'd made a breakthrough about the Philadelphia experiment. He had something incredible to show him. They arranged to meet for lunch the next day, but Jessup never made that lunch. On April 20th, 1959, a park attendant found Jessup's station wagon with a hose running from the exhaust pipe through a partially opened rear window. Towels were stuffed around the gap. It was carbon monoxide poisoning, and ultimately ruled a suicide. But the towels weren't from Jessup's home. His wife had never seen them. His briefcase, which colleagues saw with him that morning, was missing. No autopsy was ever performed. The official story is that Jessup committed suicide, but a lingering question remains. Why would a suicidally depressed man suddenly become excited the day before his death? What breakthrough had he discovered? What did he want to show Dr. Valentine? And the fact that his briefcase, which contained documents about the Philadelphia experiment, had disappeared is highly suspicious. These documents have never been found. Did Jessup get too close to the truth about Project Rainbow? Was he silenced to protect a secret that could shatter our understanding of physics and reality? Or was there another possibility, one even more sinister? What if Jessup was murdered not to hide the truth, but to give credibility to a lie? What if his death was meant to make people believe the Philadelphia experiment was real when it actually wasn't? For decades, the story circulated in UFO communities. Books were written, articles were published. The image of sailors fused to steel bulkheads became an iconic piece of American folklore. Then, in 1984, Hollywood made the movie The Philadelphia Experiment, a sci-fi thriller that introduced millions of people to this legend. And that's when a new character enters this story. A man who claimed he wasn't just a researcher or a witness. He claimed he was there, on the ship, in the green fog, when reality tore open. His name was Al Bielek. Alfred Bielek first came to public attention in 1990 at a MUFON conference, and what he told the audience was stunning. He claimed his real name was Edward Cameron, and that he was one of two brothers serving aboard the USS Eldridge on October 28, 1943. When the electromagnetic field engulfed the ship, he and his brother Duncan, terrified, jumped overboard. But they didn't land in the Philadelphia harbor. They landed in the year 1983 at Camp Hero in Montauk, New York. Bielek claimed the experiment had accidentally torn a hole in time and created a wormhole connecting October 28, 1943 to August 12, 1983. And on the other end was another secret government project, the Montauk Project. The government had taken what they had learned from the Eldridge disaster and expanded it. They weren't just making things invisible anymore. They were manipulating time itself, creating portals to the past and future, conducting mind control experiments, and making contact with extraterrestrial beings. At Montauk, he said that he met John von Neumann, the famous physicist who'd supposedly worked on the original experiment. The fact that von Neumann had died in 1957 didn't matter. Time travel makes everything complicated. The Montauk personnel, according to Bielek, sent people back through the tunnel to 1943 to shut down the generators on the Eldridge, which collapsed the time tunnel and allowed the ship to return to Philadelphia. But the Montauk jump was just the beginning. Bielek claimed that he was also sent to the year 2137. He said he spent 6 weeks there, recuperating in a hospital where doctors used vibrational and frequency-based healing. There were no scalpels, no drugs, just energy. And while recovering, he watched television of the time. And what he saw was horrifying. World War III had devastated the planet sometime between the year 2000 and 2025. Major cities were wiped off the map. The coastlines of every continent radically redrawn. Massive portions of the US were underwater. Florida was gone. The West Coast had crumbled into the Pacific. The Great Lakes had merged into an inland sea. The global population had been reduced to roughly 300 million. The US no longer existed as a unified nation, just fragmented territories governed by loose military infrastructure. But his journey didn't stop there. He said that he was also sent further in the future to the year 2749, and what he described was a completely different world. Bielek explained that humanity was living in floating cities, these massive structures suspended by anti-gravity technology. The ground had been long since abandoned, left to rewild. Humans lived above it all. Society was run entirely by a sentient artificial intelligence, a single supercomputer network that managed everything, from resource distribution to governance, conflict resolution. There was no war, no poverty, no politics as we understand it today. The AI had solved the problem of human self-destruction by removing humans from the equation and decision-making process entirely. He claimed the population of Earth in 2749 was still around 300 million, the same as 2137, as if that was the number the planet could sustain, and humanity had simply accepted it. Bielek described all of this with the calm confidence of a man recounting a business trip. He spoke about it on radio shows, at conferences, in interviews that you can still find online today. He had dates, he had details, he had an answer for everything. But the problem was, none of it could be verified, not a single thing. So how did he remember all of this? Well, in 1983, he saw the Hollywood movie. His repressed memories came flooding back, or so he claimed. The experiment, the jump, Montauk, the future, his true identity, all of it. He described something called a zero-time reference generator that had distorted space-time, psychic amplification chairs that could manifest thoughts into reality, psychic children recruited to operate the devices. It was a grand unified conspiracy theory where everything connected. Everything. But was any of it true? Well, let's look at the facts. According to the records, Al Bielek was born in 1927, making him only 16 in 1943, not a sailor in his 20s. He didn't join the Navy until after the war, and there's no record of him serving on the Eldridge. As far as the scientists who were said to have worked on the project, Nikola Tesla died months before the alleged experiment. John von Neumann had no connection to invisibility research. Bielek did hold a PhD in physics, so he likely had some technical experience and knowledge about theories of time travel and cloaking technologies. His descriptions of the future were also suspiciously vague where they should be specific, and specific where they couldn't be checked. Flooded coastlines in World War III were already staples of 1980s science fiction and New Age prophecy. Floating cities run by a benevolent AI read like a mashup of every utopian novel of the era. He went to the future and came back empty-handed. Researchers have found massive inconsistencies. Stories have changed between tellings. Psychologists have a name for what likely happened to Bielek: source confusion. The human brain is terrible at distinguishing between real memories and false ones, especially when those false memories come from vivid, emotionally engaging sources like movies. Bielek watched the Hollywood film, and his brain, whether through genuine delusion or deliberate fabrication, constructed memories based on what he saw. The fact that his story emerged after the movie and not before is a massive red flag. Bielek passed away in 2011, but his story still lives on today. If Bielek's claims can't be substantiated, what of the Philadelphia experiment itself in Project Rainbow? Well, let's look at the evidence for that. Deck logs of the USS Eldridge are in the National Archives. On October 28, 1943, the ship was actually not in Philadelphia, it was in New York Harbor, escorting a convoy. It didn't go near Philadelphia until much later in the war. In 1999, the Eldridge crew who served then held a reunion, and when asked by a journalist if the story was true, the response was laughter. They described it as a lucky ship. It never saw combat. It certainly didn't see aliens, and it wasn't in Philadelphia in the alleged time frame. And what of Carlos Allende? As it turns out, his real name was actually Carl Meredith Allen. He was a known drifter and tall tale teller. He was on the Phuroseth, the crew manifest confirmed that, but the Phuroseth was in Norfolk when the Eldridge was in New York. They were never in the same port. His physics were also word salad, scientific buzzwords strung together without making mathematical sense. And what of the Vero edition? The ONR officers weren't Men in Black type characters, they were just regular guys interested in rocketry and who found the annotated book weirdly fascinating. They printed copies as a novelty, the 1950s equivalent of forwarding a weird email chain letter. Allen later admitted to fabricating elements of the story, but by then, the legend had taken on a life of its own. So what actually happened with the Philadelphia experiment? Well, we have one more witness to examine. In 1994, French astrophysicist and ufologist Jacques Vallée published an article in the Journal of Scientific Exploration and asked readers with additional information to contact him. That's when he received a letter from an Edward Dudgeon, a 67-year-old retired executive who'd served as an electrician aboard the USS Engstrom, a destroyer escort dry-docked in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard during the summer of 1943. His name appears on 8 pages of the quarterly crew list from 1943 to 1944. Unlike Allende and Bielek, this witness actually checks out. He was there. Dudgeon confirmed classified equipment being on the Engstrom. There were big generators, massive cables, but it wasn't an invisibility machine. It was a degaussing system, technology that scrambled a ship's magnetic signature, making it invisible, in a sense, to magnetic mines and torpedoes, the real threat that was killing Allied sailors by the thousands. The process was dramatic. There was high-voltage electricity going through the cables that were wrapped around a steel hull, and in humid conditions, it would produce coronal discharge, St. Elmo's fire, an eerie blue-green glow. To sailors watching from nearby ships, it looked like something out of science fiction. And when officers discussed making ships invisible to magnetic detection, imagination would fill in the blanks. Dudgeon explained the teleportation too. The Navy used the Chesapeake and the Delaware Canal, off-limits to civilian vessels. A trip that would take commercial ships 2 days could be done in a matter of hours. To a merchant sailor like Carl Allen, hearing a ship was in Norfolk hours after seeing it in Philadelphia would seem impossible. In the bar fight, where it was said that sailors vanished into thin air, well, Dudgeon claims he might have been one of those sailors. He was there, but underage for drinking. When the brawl broke out, and it looked like the police were coming, friendly barmaids who knew him whisked him out a back door, before the cops arrived. To other patrons in the bar, especially if they'd already had a few drinks and were pumped full of adrenaline from the fight, it might have looked like he simply vanished into thin air. One moment he's in the middle of a brawl, and the next he's not there. So the idea developed that some after effect of the experiment was still affecting the crew, causing them to phase in and out of our reality. A sailor ducked out the back door becomes a sailor vanished into thin air. And there's one more ship we can talk about, the USS Timmerman, an experimental destroyer from the early 1950s that tested high-frequency generators, producing far more intense electrical effects. You could see visible arcs, glowing halos, choking ozone. The Navy's own official statement suggests that these experiments may have influenced the legend. And the timing is perfect too. Those experiments happened right before Allende wrote his letters to Morris K. Jessup. Dutchin's testimony shows us exactly how the legend was built, with real technology, real phenomena, real conversations about invisibility, real rapid transit via secret canals, real incidents exaggerated in retelling. Carl Allende took all of it, mixed it with some pop science and buzzwords, knowledge of Einstein, and added his own creative embellishments and built a modern myth. Jessup then gave it legitimacy. The Vero edition gave it a sense of mystery, and then Jessup's death gave it danger. Hollywood gave it an audience, and Bielik gave it a protagonist, a man who didn't just witness the impossible, he lived it, who traveled not just through space, but through time itself. Each layer of the story validated the others in the minds of believers, and the legend grew. So did the USS Eldridge turn invisible? Almost certainly not, at least according to what I've researched. The logs don't support it, nor do the physics, and the actual crew who served on the ship in 1943 denies it. Carlos Allende, was a troubled man who fabricated stories. But here's what did happen. The Navy conducted electromagnetic experiments on ships during World War II. Sailors saw things they didn't understand and told stories. A creative, troubled man wove those fragments into an elaborate tale. A scientist died under suspicious circumstances. Hollywood amplified the myth, and opportunists exploited our hunger for the extraordinary. The Philadelphia experiment is a ghost ship in a way, of the mind, a vessel that never existed in the physical world but sails eternally through our collective imagination, crewed by phantom sailors who were never there. And maybe that's more powerful than any real experiment could ever be. Because every time you see a Navy ship, gray and silent in the water, you can't help but wonder, what are they testing in there? What's going on? Are there new technologies sitting in a bunker right now waiting for the next war to be unleashed? What are they hiding? Ultimately, the Philadelphia experiment didn't exist. There was no ship that was disappeared. But the story did something more impressive. It made reality itself seem uncertain. It's planted a seed of doubt that grows every time a government document is classified, every time a whistleblower dies mysteriously, every time science announces a new breakthrough that sounds like science fiction. The USS Eldridge today sits in a scrapyard in Greece, cut apart for salvage decades ago. But that ghost ship, the one wrapped in green fog and electromagnetic mystery, that ship shows no signs of docking. All right, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. My name's Jeff. You've been watching Strangeology. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe to my channel, share this video, and hit the bell icon to make sure you never miss a new episode. It helps me out a ton when you do. And if there's a story that you want to hear about, or you have your own story that you'd like to share, or you have kind words to say, you can head on over to strangeology.com/contact, or you can send a direct email to stories@strangeology.com. And don't forget, Strangeology is also a podcast. I post my Strangeology podcast episodes here on my YouTube channel, but you can listen to them on any podcasting platform out there. If you're looking for deep dives into Fortean topics or interviews with authors, researchers, and experts who deal with the strange and unexplained. If you're wondering how to support this channel, you can do so by becoming a member over on patreon.com/Strangeology, and you can join for as little as $1 a month. Higher tiers equal more benefits like early access to new videos and podcast episodes, which are ad-free. You also get access to Strangeology Beyond, which is the members-only portion of the show. There's also shoutouts, exclusive merch, discounts to my online store, and a lot more. So if you want to check that out, again, it's patreon.com/Strangeology. And thank you so much to all of my members out there who help keep the lights on here at Strangeology HQ. You're so appreciated. for your continued support. And you can also sign up to become a member here on my YouTube channel as well for just under $5 a month for early access to new videos that are also ad-free. Also, if you enjoy discussing the strange and unexplained and want to be part of a growing community of like-minded people talking about and sharing topics like this and more for free, you can join our Discord, and the link will be down below. Finally, there's the merch. I've got my merch linked down below, but I also have even more available on my shop, where I've got a wide range of cryptid, alien, and otherwise Fortean designs on things like t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, mugs, stickers, blankets, magnets, posters, and more. There's something for everyone. And you can check that out at strangeology.etsy.com to grab something for yourself or someone you know who loves the strange and unexplained. And don't forget to give me a follow over on social media. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, we're everywhere. But we post short form videos on topics like these and more, memes. It's a good time. Definitely give us a follow if you haven't yet. And all those links will be down below. All right, that's all for me for now. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you again for watching. And until the next time, make sure to take care of yourselves and each other and keep it strange.